Hey everybody, it is the Macabre Tavern and it is Monochrome Monday. Today it is the Cabinet of Dr. Caligari. Yes, this film is 104 years old now. It came out in Germany right after World War I ended, believe it or not, the 26th of February, 1920. It's when this came out. Of course, it is a silent film, as all films were in 1920. Very many films came out. It is considered one of cinema's first cult films. We'll get into that here in just a moment. But what went on in this film, you ask? Well, here we go. In what appears to be a park, Francis sits on a bench with an older man who complains that spirits have driven him away from his family and home. When a dazed woman passes him, Francis explains she is his fiancée Jane, and they have suffered a great ordeal. Most of the rest of the film is a flashback to Francis' story, which takes place in Hostenval, a shadowy village of twisted buildings and spiraling streets. Francis and his friend Alan, who are good-naturedly competing for Jane's affections, plan to visit the town fair. Meanwhile, a mysterious man named Dr. Caligari seeks a permit from the rude town clerk to present a spectacle at the fair, which features César, a somnambulist. The clerk mocks and berates Caligari, but ultimately allows the permit. That night, the clerk is stabbed to death. The next morning, Francis and Alan visit Caligari's sideshow attraction, where he opens a coffin-like box to reveal the sleeping César. On Caligari's order, César awakens and answers questions from the audience. Despite Francis's protest, Alan asks, "How long shall I live?" To Alan's horror, César answers, "Your time is short. You die at dawn." Later that night, a figure breaks into Alan's home and stabs him to death in his bed. A grief-stricken Francis investigates Alan's murder with the help of Jane and her father, Dr. Olson, who obtains police authorization to investigate. That night, the police apprehend a criminal in possession of a knife who is caught attempting to murder an elderly woman. When questioned by Francis and Dr. Olson, the criminal confesses he tried to kill the elderly woman, but denies any part in the final two deaths. He was merely taking advantage of the situation to divert blame from himself. At night, Francis spies on Caligari and observes what appears to be César sleeping in his box. However, the real César sneaks into Jane's home as he sleeps. He raises a knife to stab her, but instead abducts her after a struggle, dragging her through the window and onto the street. Chased by an angry mob, César eventually drops Jane and flees as he soon collapses and dies of exhaustion. Francis confirms that the criminal who confessed to the elderly woman's murder is still locked away and could not have been Jane's attacker. Francis and the police investigate Caligari's sideshow, where he discovers that the fake César sleeping in a box is only a dummy. Caligari escapes the confusion. Francis follows him to see Caligari go into an insane asylum. Upon further investigation, Francis is shocked to learn that Caligari is the asylum's director. With help from the asylum staff, Francis studies the doctor's records and diary while the director is sleeping. The writings reveal his obsession with the story of an 18th century mystic named Caligari, who uses a somnambulist named César to commit murders in northern Italian towns. The director is attempting to understand the earlier Caligari, experiments on a somnambulist admitted to the asylum who becomes his Caesar. Or César. Let's read that again. Experiments on a somnambulist admitted to the asylum who becomes his César. The asylum director screams, "I must become Caligari!" Francis and the doctors call the police to Caligari's office, where they show him César's corpse. Caligari then attacks one of the staff. He is subdued, restrained in a straitjacket, and becomes an inmate in his own asylum. The narrative returns to the present, where Francis concludes his story, and in a twist ending, Francis is depicted as an inmate of the asylum. Jane and Cesare are patients as well. Jane believes she's a queen, while Cesare, not a somnambulist, but awake, quiet, and not visibly dangerous. The Francis refers to Dr. Caligari as the asylum director. Francis attacks him and is restrained in a straitjacket and then placed in the same cell where Caligari is confined to Francis's story. The asylum director announces that he now understands Francis' delusion and he is confident he can cure him. There you go. That is the plot of the movie. And of course, this was written by Hans Janowist and Karl Mayer, both of whom were pacifists by the time they had met following World War I. Janowist actually served as an officer, but the experience left him embittered with the military, which affected his writing. Now, Mayer feigned madness to basically get out of any service. I mean, he basically went full Corporal Klinger, let's just be honest. They met in June of 1918 by a mutual friend. Both writers were absolutely broke at the time. Mayer was in love with an actress named Gilda Lachner, and she encouraged them to write a film together. She later would become the inspiration for Jane, as a matter of fact. So, this movie, again, it's really the genesis of what we would consider art house films and film noir. I mean, it had a huge influence, so you can really say this is probably where it goes and where it starts, and all that. Of course, this was also written. A lot of people said that it's representing the German war government. Caligari does. Cesare, representative of the common man condition, like soldiers to kill. You have that line between sanity and insanity. A lot of things that we're experiencing today, really, in this political climate, if you will. This really does speak to, not to sound like a faux intellectual here, but the duality of human nature, if you will. So, anyways, this is actually an extremely great movie. I think it's still on the Internet Archive. You might have to go look and see that. I know that's where I saw it. It is, like I said, one of the best films ever made, for crying out loud. It's one of the first films ever made. 104 years old, believe it or not. And really, pre-World War II, Austrian guy, Germany film. It's probably one of the best films from that era, if not the best film from that era. So, again, this is a great movie to go check out. If you really want to get into like film noir, you're really into silent movies, this is one of them for you. Alright, so that's going to take care of everything here. I'll see you next Monday with our another adventure into the black and white.